Okay, we are live on Create Waunakee. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm here with our Waunakee resident, Sarah Stouffer-Lerch. And Sarah is home from college from Ohio State University. She's majoring in public policy and hospitality management. And also volunteers here at the Dane County Historical Society. But anyway, one of her passions is baking. And so what a perfect time of year to have her as a guest on our Waunakee Can You Cook segment. And she is going to be making cinnamon rolls, pecan cinnamon rolls, which like what a perfect time of year to roll these out. So anyway, oh, and I'm your host, Katie Lowry. I have not been on camera so far. Usually I'm in a mask on site, but we're doing it remote today. So anyway, Sarah, why don't you kick us off and say hi and tell us what we need to start with here.
Great. Well, as Katie said, I am making pecan cinnamon rolls today. This is a recipe from one of my favorite cookbooks, the Good Housekeeping Illustrated Cookbook. It's something that our family uses a lot, and we have a lot of recipes in here that we tend to use.
That's awesome. I love that cookbook. It's such a reliable staple cookbook.
the cooking Bible in our house.
Totally, absolutely.
I'm gonna start with the dough, and then I'm gonna make the filling. Then we have the ingredients for the glaze. And we already have some of the some dough proofed already, so we can show you how to put on the filling and make that. And then we have a batch that's already cooked to show you how it will look as a final product. So I'm going to start.
Yeah. So just to give us, so obviously viewers are not going to be totally able to cook along in this segment because anybody who's made dough from scratch or anything like this, it does take a while. So from start to finish, how long should viewers expect to be able to do this all?
It should take around 2 hours, 15 minutes, something like that. It takes about an hour for the dough to proof. And then ideally you would like to, once you roll it into the cinnamon roll shapes, you would ideally like to proof it for another 45 minutes. But I found that isn't necessary because once it's in the oven, it pretty much takes care of that. So about 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay. So about 2 hours. All right. So let's see how you make your dough.
Sure. So in front of me here, I have the salt, which is about, and if you have found this recipe posted somewhere, I have scaled this recipe back by a third. So I'm using a third of what it calls for each of the ingredients. Okay. So I have about a third of a teaspoon of salt. I have 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. I have about a third of a cup of sugar. I have 3 cups of flour. I have 1 egg, and then I have butter, a third cup of butter, which has been melted and cooled in about 2/3 cup of milk.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so the recipe or the ingredient amounts are posted in the event page for this event. But as Sarah said, she cut everything by a third. So you'll notice that the sweet dough recipe in the Facebook page is multiplied by 3. So in this case, she cut everything in a third, which is what we want probably.
All right, so we are going to start with putting the sugar in our bowl. I'm going to add our salt. I'm going to add our yeast.
And just for people to know, when you buy yeast in the packets at the grocery store, that's already the amount that she's adding. So you don't need to measure that out. It's 1 packet is 1 recipe here.
And then we're going to start off with adding 2/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour. Just kind of level that off. Put that in there. And then
2/3 cup of flour?
Yep, that was 2/3 cup of flour.
Okay.
And then we're gonna our wet ingredients in and get a mixing. You can use a stand mixture. I only have a hand mixture, so that's what I'm gonna use. Then you're gonna slowly pour this in.
Butter.
why I have an apron, because this stuff can kind of fly everywhere.
That's the butter, the melted butter that you're pouring in, right, Sarah?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I just couldn't remember if that was the eggs.
And then you're just gonna mix this until all the flour is incorporated. And it's gonna look kind of soupy right now. That's perfectly fine because we're going to add the rest of the flour in a little bit here. So scrape down the sides a little bit. And then we're gonna our egg. And then that's gonna be whipped in.
Obviously, if you're making the full batch that has like the three batches, it calls for 2 eggs. But if you're splitting in a third, obviously you can't get 2/3 of an egg. So it sounds like you're saying just use 1 egg
Yeah,
for a third of the recipe.
just to kind of make sure that I'm not using too much liquid in this recipe.
Yeah.
And then you can set aside your beaters. Set this in here so that I don't get on the table. And then you're gonna use, you're gonna hand mix the rest of the flour, either with a metal spoon or a wooden spoon. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So for people who are just tuning in case it's not clear, Sarah is with us and we're making cinnamon pecan rolls, perfect for the holidays. I love making Christmas morning. I love making a big breakfast. That's kind of our thing. I mean, we usually do a holiday meal, like on Christmas Eve night or Christmas Day night. But one thing I love is having a big breakfast on Christmas morning, which is like, this is right up our alley. I don't think anybody doesn't like cinnamon rolls.
Oh my God. Especially when they have the oven and you can smell the cinnamon. That is the best.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, so you're just gonna mix this in, kind of range. You don't want it to be too dry, but you want it to be, you don't want it to be too wet either. You want it to be kind of pliable, but not too wet, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so just
like you want to be able to handle it with your hands.
exactly.
And so like a little bit tacky, but
Yeah.
like not where it's like sticking to your hands big time. If it's sticking to your hands big time, then you need to add a little bit more flour, probably like a couple tablespoons at a time. If it's too dry, like it's not even coming close to sticking to your hands, then you might need to add a little bit of water, maybe a teaspoon at a time.
Yeah.
So I often use my bread machine to make dough because it can be I mean, you're doing an awesome job, but it is kind of an undertaking making a dough sometimes.
Forearms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the kneading and stirring and stuff. And people who have KitchenAids, you can use your KitchenAid mixer also that has a dough hook, and that kind of does the job too. If you do have a bread machine, or you could probably always find somebody who's willing to give you or loan you their bread machine, because I think it's one of those appliances people bought and then nobody used. I find them super useful to make the dough. Like you can put it on a dough setting and it'll mix it for you and it'll rise it for you, and then you just take it out and do what you want with it. But Sarah here is she's not a novice, so she's doing it all by hand. So it looks like you're like constantly like pushing and folding over and pushing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what kneading is. Yeah.
And ideally, like I said, once you have like your dough mixed together, then you would ideally want to knead this for about 10 minutes on a lightly floured surface. And then you would let it rest for about an hour, which AKA proofing, which helps the yeast activate and get those gluten strands kind of activated so that your dough can rise a little bit and get that kind of chewy, airy texture that cinnamon rolls are known for. But since you have 30 minutes, I have already prepared dough. So I'm going to set this one aside.
Okay. So in a real world, you said that you would need that for about another like 5 minutes or so?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
What I was doing is on a flat surface, just kind of fold it back and forth with your hands, kind of knead it with the palms of your hands, and just make sure you're activating that gluten strands.
Okay.
And so once you have the dough, I'm going to focus on making the filling, which is pretty much the most important part of the cinnamon making roll process.
Okay.
And for our particular recipe, I have half a cup of brown sugar. I have a heaping teaspoon of brown sugar, and then I'll probably put some extra because you can never have enough cinnamon, obviously.
Okay, so half cup of brown sugar, and then you said a teaspoon of ground cinnamon.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Have a pinch of salt. It's not in the recipe, but I like to add a pinch of salt just to kind of counteract the sweetness of the dough and the filling, and just kind of get a different note in there. Then I have half a cup of chopped pecans. And then this was optional. If you have seen the recipe, it's half a cup of raisins. You don't have to put it in there if you're not a fan of raisins, but I kind of like the taste of raisins in there as well. So I'm going to put the half cup of brown sugar in my bowl.
Okay.
Followed by a little bit of salt, cinnamon, which I'll probably add some more after everything else is in there. And then I can put some of the pecans in there as well. I'll probably sprinkle the rest on top. So maybe I'll have the pecans in there.
Okay.
And then half the raisins as well. And then why not? I'll just add a little bit more cinnamon.
All right, couple dashes.
Just a couple pats if you're using one of these things. Oops, take your spoon, kind of mix that around, make sure everything is kind of mixed together so you don't have one blob of like salt in there or anything like that, just so everything's incorporated.
Brown sugar likes to lump up sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One trick, if you ever have brown sugar and it's all hard, it's not a lost cause. You'll be surprised. All you have to do is put like a slice of bread in your brown sugar bag, and like a couple hours later, your brown sugar will not be hard anymore. It's crazy. It's like it's such a amazing tip. And then you have a hard piece of bread, which is kind of funny.
Toast or croutons or something like that.
Yeah. Right, so I forgot to ask, on your dough, did you use salted butter or unsalted butter?
I used unsalted butter, but if you happen to use salted butter, just cut back on the amount of salt a little bit. It shouldn't make a difference.
Yeah, okay. I'm always surprised, like baking, I mean, almost always in baking you use unsalted butter, but cookbooks are not that good about telling you that.
Right. Butter leaves you to figure out what that means. So.
Exactly.
Salted, but it's not too much of a loss if you find yourself using or only having salted butter. So I have the filling mixed up, and I am going to switch to doing the filling and the dough, just so we can show how that process is done.
Okay, so you're gonna show us some dough that's been resting in a bowl for about, what did you say, like an hour or something?
About an hour. I've actually rolled it out already into the rectangle.
Okay.
Rectangle actually. Here, I'll move over here so you can see. But basically what you want is kind of like a rectangle shape. I haven't done the best job making it perfect rectangle, but you know, imperfection is what makes us human. So,
And you did that on a floured surface, I'm assuming, like a little bit of flour underneath there so it doesn't stick.
Yeah, just a little bit, not too much. I don't want to dry out the dough or anything like that.
Sure.
So we have that, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna, here I have about A couple tablespoons of melted butter. And then we are going to take our brush here and just kind of, channel your inner Bob Ross and just kind of to end with the butter.
Just happy little, happy little trees of butter on your dough.
Exactly. Happy little butter seed here.
So
Even
your dough is about what, like maybe 10 inches by 6 inches or something?
Yeah, about that. It doesn't, approximate measurements aren't really, I think in the book it says like something like 10 by 4, something like that, 10 by 5, but it really, as long as it's vaguely rectangle shaped, it should work out.
Yeah, okay. And you just use a rolling pin, I'm assuming, to roll out your dough?
Exactly, yeah. And if you kind of flatten it with your palms or something before you roll it out, that really helps get kind of a, I guess, more even level of your dough.
Okay. And just another tip, if you are rolling out your dough and it's shrinking back on you, the best thing to do is just cover it with some plastic wrap so it doesn't dry out and just let it sit for another 10 minutes.
All right, so we have the butter, and then we are going to take our filling, which we have mixed already, just kind of sprinkle it over the melted butter. And don't worry if like stuff falls to the edge or anything like that. We'll just pick that up later.
Yeah. Okay.
And when you roll it up, some of the sugar may like fall out onto the counter, but like I said, don't worry about that because once it's in the oven, the sugar is going to caramelize and the butter is going to help with that process. And everything will be like the gooey center of the cinnamon roll that we all want and love.
Yes, absolutely. So do you ever toast your pecans in advance, or do you find that untoasted, they kind of toast themselves inside of the recipe?
I have tried toasted pecans before, but I prefer the non-toasted. I don't know why, but you can definitely they'll be good.
Yeah. And for those who want to toast nuts at home, I mean, it's literally just putting them out on a baking sheet and putting them in like a, 300 to 350 degree oven for just a few minutes, just until they kind of get fragrant. Nuts burn very easily, so you have to be careful of that.
You might have some left over, depending on how much you want. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit more raisins on top, then a few of my leftover pecans here.
Looking good. We're on our way to greatness. I can see.
We are halfway there.
Yeah.
All right, and then just gonna make sure things don't fall out here. Then what you want to do is kind of carefully take your long edge of the rectangle and just carefully as you can. This is the hardest part.
Yeah, starting the roll.
I made these once, and some of our cats were in the kitchen, and I was doing this, and it was not looking so good. And my cat was just staring at me, just like judging me hardcore. So just try to make it as tight as you can. But if it doesn't work out the way, if things fall out, that's okay. We're all just trying our best here.
That's right. Just tuck them in as you go.
Yeah.
Whatever doesn't make it in there it'll be okay.
Okay. And then once you kind of you can try to make sure the dough is wrapped up as much as you can.
Okay. Yeah. So you kind of make a log.
Slide down a little bit. Obviously, some things fell out, but that's okay. I think enough was saved in there that we're okay. And then I'm gonna grab our cooking vessel real quick.
Okay.
So I know some people like to use like a glass baking pan or some kind of other baking pan, but I prefer cast iron. I collect cast iron. It's one of my favorite methods to cook things in. I think it's one of the most versatile cooking materials that you can use. So my preference, but you can use obviously glass or any other pan you have. I just prefer this because it's a vintage cast iron piece that I just really love to use. So I'm going to
Nice.
start with cutting the end off, just so we have, I don't know, just the more perfect parts of it, and then set those ones aside.
Okay. Yeah, there's always that's the thing with cinnamon rolls. The ends are always going to be like the the weird pieces, but
Yeah,
they still
yeah.
taste good. So did you oil your cast iron?
I did, yeah. It is pre-oiled just for some cooking spray. And then what I like to do, just so I make sure that we have kind of similar thickness of slices, is I kind of like to start in the center, and then I cut that in half, and then I cut the resulting piece in half, and then just keep doing like in half
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
like the perfect kind of thing that you want.
Mhm.
Maybe I
Maybe-
might even third in these,
Yeah.
just so we have more cinnamon rolls to go around.
Yeah, because these are going to rise, considerably. So they might look thin, as you're cutting them, but obviously these are going to puff up.
Exactly. Okay. And then as you go, you can either cut them all or just kind of put them in as you go. And I know some people have done like cut the cinnamon rolls just like, I don't know. I've heard people do it with like unflavored dental twine. I'm not sure about that, just because this dough is kind of, I guess, I don't know if it would work like that, but I don't know, different tricks in the oven or in the kitchen or whatever you want to do. But just make sure that you have a knife that's not serrated, because that's going to get stuck in the dough and it will kind of.
Okay. So you just need a good, sharp, non-serrated knife to cut through those.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you really want to see those like pinwheel kind of shapes when you cut it. That's gonna look really nice once it's risen and all caramelized. So just kind of fit those in there however you want.
So you're filling up your pan like pretty tight.
Yeah. I like how it when it bakes, it just kind of fills up the whole pan, and I really like the aesthetic of that. If you don't want it as filled, definitely don't do it as much as I am. But yeah. Let's see here.
So your cinnamon rolls probably rise up considerably versus like spreading out.
Yeah, they do. They rise up, is what I've found. And then if I put these Frankenstein ends in, that's just find a place for them. You know, there's a place for everyone in my cast iron home.
That's right.
Philosophy. So what after you have the cinnamon rolls in there, not to mention you should have preheated your oven to 400, and then you would bake this. The cookbook assumes that you are cooking using glass, something like that. So it recommends 25 minutes, but I found that if you're cooking with cast iron, the heat of the cast iron kind of can take that down to about 20 minutes or so. Just what you're looking for, kind of golden brown on top. And the cinnamon roll should have puffed up considerably. That's kind of what you're looking for.
Okay, so you don't need to let these rise for like another hour or anything. You're gonna put them right in the oven?
So I've done it both ways. I've done it like wait for them to cook for 45 more minutes, or you can just bake them right away. Either way, they're still gonna turn out really well.
Okay.
So I actually have a batch that I made earlier.
Yay!
Okay, so this is a smaller cast iron pan that I have. And you can see that there were spaces between this, like about 2 centimeter space, and they kind of spread out a little bit, and they rose up, and they kind of just filled out the whole pan. And so I'm gonna make the glaze right now, and then I'm gonna pour it on top, and you can see what the finished product would look like.
Okay.
So for the glaze, we have 2 cups of powdered sugar. Again, this glaze recipe is not scaled down. I have made a previous batch that I'm gonna finish up using the glaze. But if you were just using a third of the recipe, just obviously scale that down a third as well. And then
Okay.
we have tablespoons of water.
So
And then
the quantities that are on the Facebook page, are those, that's for 3 batches then for the glazing as well?
yeah,
Okay, got it.
I did not scale it down because, I mean, you always want more glaze, so it's like serving size is relevant here. So I don't want to judge anyone who's like, hey, my serving size of 3 is a serving size of 1. So
That's right. You don't want to be short on glaze. That would be a tragedy.
we want everyone to feel welcomed here. So I put 2 cups of powdered sugar in here, and I'm going to put the 3 tablespoons of water in here as well.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to put a dash of vanilla in here. I don't really measure vanilla because, I don't know. I feel like with vanilla, you just have to go with your gut, you know. Okay. Then just gonna stir this up.
Okay.
And if you need more water, just you can add more water.
So the consistency that you're looking for, is it sort of like a frosting, basically, kind of like a little bit of a runny frosting?
Yeah, exactly. Not quite like buttercream, not quite like a mirror glaze, kind of in between those two.
Okay. And you always have to be careful with glazing because a little bit of water goes a long way. It's always surprising how even like a half teaspoon of water can throw off the whole consistency.
Right. Okay, so as you kind of see, so you can see lines on it, but they don't last too long.
Okay. That's a good way of describing it. So would you have let your cinnamon rolls cool down by this point, or would you put the glaze on like shortly after they came out of the oven?
You can do either. I found if you do it right out of the oven, the glaze kind of melts and goes everywhere, and it's not as attractive. But
yeah.
If you wait a little bit till it's like kind of room temperature, lukewarm kind of thing, then it kind of sticks and it looks a little bit better. But either way, it doesn't. It depends on like if you want it to look aesthetic or if you just want to eat them right away. I'm just gonna use my spoon and just kind of. You can do it fancy, like kind of different lines and stuff, or you can just kind of dump it on. Doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. It's so pretty.
And obviously that's like not enough glaze, but for the sake of aesthetically pleasing cinnamon rolls.
Yeah, right.
Normally I would like just go ham and just like put as much on as possible. But
yeah.
But for now, I think, yeah, this is the finished batch of cinnamon rolls.
There it is. Oh, yeah. Well, now I'm bummed that I'm not there in person because then I could be on the receiving end of a cinnamon roll right now. But that's all right. I will make these and then I'll get to eat the whole pan. Well, thank you. This has been awesome. It's been so nice to have you as a guest. And for people who are going to make these or have started making these, please post your pictures in the comment section of the video. We love to see people's completed products. It's fun just to see who's cooking along with us. And you can, watch this video anytime on the Facebook page. It also goes to the YouTube channel for Create Waunakee. So you can find it again there. And Sarah, thank you so much. It was great having you. And you could post the recipe also to the Facebook page in the comments of this video. That way people have a recipe to draw from in case they just need a little bit more direction through the video.
Sure. I will do that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It was great.
Yep. Happy holidays, everybody.